Hello, I'm Susan Graham of Senior Edge Legal, and I'm going to talk to you today in the Beyond Retirement Learning series about what will happen to your treasures when you're gone, when you die. I'm talking the treasures you have in your home that don't have a title on them. Now, my purpose in this series is to provide you useful information so you can have a secure future. There are a few other things that I want to offer to you, and one is access to free legal forms on my website. And if you fill out that evaluation form at the bottom, that will give you access to those documents. In addition, if you fill out that form and you want to meet with me, there's a way to do that, so just indicate that. So let's get started. This is the 18th episode of Beyond Retirement Learning, and I'm going to talk to you about what happens to your treasures when you die. What are your treasures? The treasures are, the legal system regards them as untitled assets. Pretty much I'm talking about things that are in your home. The rug, the china, the gun, the pictures, the silver, the rings, that kind of thing. And they could be very valuable or have, really an insignificant value. When my grandmother died, I ended up with all of her kitchen things. I didn't know I was going to get married, but my parents put them all in a barrel, and I got married a year later, and they gave me all that stuff. Now, I didn't have anything, so I was absolutely thrilled. I still use my grandmother's sifter when I'm baking, and that sifter's probably worth 25 cents, maybe because it's an antique, maybe it's worth $1. But still, those are items that I'm talking about. They could have a sentimental value or a high dollar value. Now, most people do nothing. If you do nothing, it creates a little chaos in the family because then people have to figure out how to divvy it up. But the other thing is, if they can't figure that out, and that gets to be quite elaborate, those items will be sold. Well, the family, of course, can buy it out from the estate, but nonetheless, it creates a lot of unhappiness. If they haggle about it and they can't come to an agreement, I guarantee you it'll be sold. Another problem about the stuff is frequently we have in this business what's called a 24-hour free steal rule. Now, when I first started practicing law, an older attorney told me about that, and I said, what are you talking about? What kind of stupid law is that? And they said, well, this is the real world, Susan. When someone dies, the neighbors and the relatives back up to the house in a pickup truck and start taking stuff out. They just cherry pick through what they want. Of course, that's illegal, but, then what are you going to do about it? When that actually happens, and it happens way too often, the only way to get that property back is for the person who's responsible for the estate, that's either the personal representative, the person who's appointed by the court under a will to manage the affairs of the deceased person, or a successor trustee if there are assets that are in a trust. That individual has to tell the person who stole it, give it back. If they refuse to give it back, it's necessary to file a criminal complaint with the local court or the local sheriff. And then, once you've filed a criminal complaint, then you can make a claim against the insurance company for theft. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen anybody do that. Nobody is willing to go to that extent. And even if they do, the person who took that item, it's called stealing, if they stole that item, oftentimes, of course, they deny that they took it. And even if they did take it, it's not going to be given back. It's going to go up in the dumpster. How are you going to get it? If they stole the $10,000 ring, you're going to go to their house and go through all the things? That's just not going to happen. So let's talk about some more constructive ways of dealing with this. One of the things you can do is you can give away that stuff now. I'm talking about people that I do estate plans for are usually retired. You look around your house, there's more stuff in there than you even can't remember where some of it came from. So you could use this as an opportunity to give things during your lifetime to people who would enjoy that. I'm talking about Christmas presents, birthday presents, anniversary, whatever. I have a number of family antiques in my own family that I've received from my family. And there was a wedding of a child of a cousin of mine. I mean, how distant a relative is that? But I actually like them. So I gave them some bookends that are very expensive, and they're antique bookends that are about 150 years old. And I gave them a story about it and a book that I had about it. And it thrilled me to give it to them. Came off of my shelf, and they enjoyed it. They were so delighted to get that stuff. So that's something you can do. But how about you really like using these things? You don't want to give them away during your lifetime. Okay, then you can write a list. Now, when you set up an estate plan using a will or trust, there's a reference to a list of personal property items in almost all of those documents. And that's a list you can fill out yourself, usually in your own handwriting. And you just need to date it and sign it. And you need to describe the item so that some stranger can figure out what you're talking about, and describe the person that's receiving it so that there's no dispute. So if you have, like I have a set of pearls on, but I have some other pearls too. You just don't say your favorite pearls, you say which one it is, the 16-inch strand or whatever. Same thing with guns. If you're giving guns, you say serial number 123 about the gun. So that's wonderful. Again, this list is for untitled assets. So you cannot put a car on that list because a car has a title. But again, you could put down guns, it can be very expensive. You can put down rings or other things that can be expensive or modest. You can say all of my kitchen items or all of my tools or all of my hunting items go to somebody or other. But the value of that is when you're gone, those items will be distributed. Now, let's say you said I gave my piano to Sally. Well, when you die, you don't have the piano. You gave it away to Jane during your lifetime. Well, you still don't have a piano. And Sally can't chase down Jane to say, give me back the piano. That doesn't work like that because you don't own a piano at the time of your death. Or it could have been you sold the piano, and so you don't have a piano. So even though there's a piano listed on that list, we don't care. We just skip on by that. You can write a new list anytime you want, but if you don't get around to keeping it up to date, again, I'm letting you know that items that you listed that you no longer have, we don't care about. We're just looking at what you have at the time of your death that's on that list. There are things that you're not going to list. Okay? I myself, I've collected a lot of family antiques, and I have about 6 items that I've listed to go to different people that I think would enjoy receiving that. I didn't list everything in my house. I had one client who was an engineer who I joked with and said, you need another job, because he listed about 300 items on his list, and he included the serial number for his washing machine and who was supposed to receive it. In my world, that's a little crazy. I don't even know where the serial number is on my washing machine, nor do I care. But I'm just saying you can be as long and as detailed as you want, or you can make it a little more abbreviated. You may want to say in your estate planning documents what's not on the list, who gets it. Give it to a child, give it to a friend that you like. Let them figure out what to do with the rest of the stuff. You can say it goes to my personal representative, and again, that individual will get it all, but they can decide what to do with it. Or you can say it goes to my trustee. Again, that individual will decide what to do with it or have it sold. Lastly, pets are considered personal property items. I'm a dog lady. I've always had dogs in my life, and I always will. And that, doesn't really sit quite right to me. I really enjoy having pets. But that's what the law says. The law says they're personal property items. They have no title. So you can also address the pets on your list if you choose to. Who's going to get that pet? Now, you can't on that list say, and whoever gets that pet gets $5,000 to pay for the vet bills or whatever. You can, and maybe that'll happen, but that's not legally enforceable because that list only is for untitled items. No cash. You can't say $50 on my checking account to someone can go on that list. And no titled assets. You can't say my car. You can't say my brokerage account. You can't say my house. That can't be on the list. The law prohibits that. But the best thing about you addressing what happens with your treasures is it pleases you. And it's what you want, and that's what will happen. If you don't say anything about it, you just say, oh, well, they'll figure it out. Understand that you're probably going to create some chaos unless you have just one child who inherits everything. You're going to create some hard feelings. Because if somebody's mad about you giving the ring to your oldest child, they'll be mad at you. They won't necessarily be mad at the oldest child. So I strongly encourage you to take a few moments and sit down and look around your house and say, gee, these are some things that are important to me, and I want to give them to these particular individuals. Or you could give your library to the local library. One last thing, if the items you're giving away have a story, you may want to write that story down, perhaps on this list, or put it with that particular item. I had the privilege of receiving a scarab. It was a scarab from an Egyptian tomb, and it had a long story about it. It was from a very long story. Anyway, a poor private or whoever it was in the English army was carrying this stuff out, and they were told, don't you put anything in your pockets, don't you steal anything. And he dropped the scarab on his way out of the tomb, and he had other things in his hands, so he just, didn't even think about it, put the scarab in his pocket. Well, nobody found out about it until he discovered it later, and he didn't want to tell anybody because he'd be punished very severely. Well, that scarab ended up in my family, and I gave that to another relative, and I gave it to the relative with the story, and they had never heard that story before. And they were so pleased not only to have the scarab, but even more importantly to have the story. So I encourage you to add the stories to that as well. Now, I want to thank you for listening to this. Let me tell you, the next time on the 19th episodes, we're going to talk about creating 3 steps to creating a safety net for those with memory issues. And if you would be nice enough to take the time to fill out the evaluation form at the bottom of your page, there are multiple reasons for that. One is you can help me by critiquing me and telling me how can I improve these programs or what topics you would like me to discuss. Also, it gives you access to those free legal forms such as the living will and health power of attorney and financial powers of attorney. And lastly, if you want to visit with me, indicate that and someone from my office will call and see if we could possibly be a good fit to go forward. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this.